What's going on, workforce? Brian here, and today we're talking about a wide range of ideas, but really one whole theme. Namely, it's really kind of, coming out of the concept of jobs and the game itself. Obviously, Stormblood didn't get a tank or a healer, and so there's been various conversations surrounding the DPS queue times. That has led into, more speculation as to what kind of jobs should they introduce, but a theme, or at least something that I'm feeling, just keeps coming up about the whole topic itself, and it's really that the fact is we don't need new jobs from a tank or a healer perspective to keep those queue times low. It would help, it helps in the short term, but if you actually look, I think, deeper at the problem, you see that it's not about the lack of I guess jobs or interesting ways to play a tank or a healer, at least in my opinion. It's more about there is I'm de-incentivized from playing those jobs. Now, I might be the odd man out because I'm working on all of my jobs. I'm working on leveling up everything to 70, and that's largely due to just the community asking for controller guides and me needing to go put the time and effort into it. Pretty much once I get all my casters done and all my tanks and healers, that's usually like, I'm good, but okay, so you guys, you want monk, you want machinist, you got it. So that being aside, that situation aside, there is really no major incentive for me to tank or to heal in a DPS queue, right? There is really no incentive for me to do, any leveling roulette or things like that once I'm at level cap. Now, we can talk about, the reward system, and I think this is really where it needs to go. But I want to kind of share a couple of ideas, and this also came up in large part due to the Aetheryte Radio podcast that I was on this weekend. On this podcast, we're talking about the job system itself, and then we ended up going a little bit deeper. And so I want to kind of highlight some moments from that podcast for you guys right now. So Fusion kicked this off, and this is what he had to say.
Without us needing
I think gear right now is probably the biggest issue right now, because it's like, okay, you gear up after a few weeks in a patch, you don't need to do anything else. I mean, obviously, right, you could gear up another class if you're playing more than one, but it's like there's so little incentive to go back and do anything. I mean, and even then, right, I guess, right, that's the beauty with the merit point system, is like, even then, it's like, you're not going to be like, oh man, I could grind a bunch of dungeons and get +1 Vite. Like, it's not going to sell a lot of people, but at the same time, it's still something for some people to work towards, right? It's that weird kind of middle ground where you'll get some people, but not everybody with it. I hate the gear progression in this game, especially because I played a lot of 11 before the 99 level cap, and so you get to a point where you're working for months, years to get certain pieces of gear because the level cap hasn't changed. And you're getting that one perfect piece. But in 14, it's like, okay, every 3 months, your gear becomes obsolete. And that sucks.
So you take that. You take how, we're talking about gear progression being, the main thing at endgame. You have, your XP leveling from, throughout the expansion as a base. But once you hit level cap, it all shifts to gear progression. And I think essentially that is also where I'm at. I definitely, I guess, reflect the frustration that Fusion X is, feeling right there as well. Namely, in that XP is useless at level cap. It is completely useless, and yet it's the main reward for a lot of these contents. We talked about the fates and how to fix them. We've talked about all of these things, and why give me XP? I'm at level. There's no real value to it, and so they have to go in, and in the past, incentivize these type of contents with the relic system. And I guess one thing, just as food for thought that I have is, am I feeling this way because we don't have that new relic system? It was delayed till patch 4.2. We're still assuming that at this moment, and with that usually comes with that next level grind, etc. That it's gear that you can level up, but it's selective gear, and it does come with a lot of grinding and a lot of varying steps. Not knocking that system, I think that should exist, but the question in and of itself is, why keep offering me XP rewards because I'm going to shift myself to go play those jobs. And we've talked about like an XP token. We've talked about ways that we can, maybe like earn the token and then apply it to another job, either as a buff or a one-time, I guess, loot pool of XP. But those things aside, the question and the real theme of this is, what can we do with XP? What could they do to make XP relevant? What could they do in the game now that would allow us to build off that, to have more than just one type of progression system at the end game, one that essentially, rewards us for, continuing to play and continuing to run those, leveling roulettes and things like that. Because once you hit level cap, they're going to give me a crack cluster. I've run and leveled up enough that I'm flush with them. I have plenty of crack clusters to last me for a whole lifetime at this point. What can we do to fix that? So this is kind of where I want to kind of dive into that. So that was a long intro, a long-winded way of saying, there's a couple of ideas out there that I want to share with you guys, and I really am interested in what you guys think and where you fall, in that spectrum. Obviously, one, simple solution that we talked about even on the Aetheryte Radio podcast is like, if you look at what other games are doing, and one solution would be, well, you have, let's just take Destiny as a bad example. You have the Bright Engram system. Aside from selling that stuff, imagine if you hit a level on your job, if you're rewarded with some sort of loot box or engram in this regards, that all of a sudden there's something exciting that happens with your level that it isn't necessarily tied to, being, more powerful. And the reason I say that is because the other idea that, I think the community has been, questioning, maybe we'll see one day, is what's called a merit point system, or you could almost think of it like, Paragon from Diablo, where once you hit level cap, you continue to level, but it's a whole different subsystem. The merit point system allowed you to take points and slot them into various other things. Obviously, disadvantages to a merit point system in Final Fantasy XIV would be that if it's solely affecting battle, you could see that there would be obviously a discrepancy in those who have merit points and those who don't. And you could see that it would be probably harder to balance and manage content in the later game where, okay, you want to run this trial, you need to make sure your merit level, 55, etc. And then whenever an expansion happens, are those merit points reassigned or rebalanced? There just seems to be a lot of work there. And then I'm not saying I don't want a merit point system. It's actually the opposite. I do, but I don't want a rushed merit point system, and nor would I expect to see a merit point system introduced in the life cycle of, this expansion. I think it's something that takes a lot of effort from the development team to really kind of think through, plot through, plan through, and then add that in probably with 5.0 or later. But I'd love to know your thoughts exactly, if you guys would be pro merit point. But outside of that progression itself, a loot box of some sort is a great way to reward us with varying objects, items, tomes, titles, things like that, so that the leveling process itself isn't, feeling like it's wasted. Now, that doesn't really fit the bill when it comes to full-on progression, because again, your progression is still solely tied to your gear. And Fusion's point, that he made on the podcast, I think is true, is that, in 11, and again, not saying that I want this game to be 11, but in 11, you had the level cap set for so long that you would work for a long time to get gear itself. And so the progression wasn't solely based off of gear, and it's more that the constant recycling with, if you think about it, every 6 months, gear goes out, gear comes, new gear comes in to replace it. And so there is a quick turnaround with that gear. And so there's no, outside of, I guess, the relic system, there really isn't any real piece of gear that you just have to have. And by the time you get your relic weapon, at least how it's been in the past, there's only just a little bit of content before it gets completely replaced with the newest expansion. So it's not like you can work to get something in the game that you will have for the next couple of, next 2 years, and that is your weapon. The glamour system somewhat does that. And that, that being said, there's another idea. So there's the two ideas that, kind of the loot box, the Bright Engram system, merit points or Paragon points obviously some challenges there. And then finally, like, Flattus, who was from Maelstrom Radio, he joined us on the podcast, and he had this idea, and I want to share it with you right now.
No, and you could easily, I'm not saying like look at Warcraft, because I'll never, I mean, even though I played that game for like 13 years, and I at one point I was like realizing I was just throwing money into the big fire hole, and but you start to look at, like, you need to start looking at, like, all right, cool, they did a weapon where that was your, after you hit level cap, that was your continual, how do I keep growing my character? This weapon is my thing. I keep growing. It gets more powerful, and it's something that takes with me, and there's different skins for it, so it's not static. Yeah, and that's how they like figured out a progression system past whatever level cap was.
And and I loved this idea. I really do. Like, balance issues aside, we can pick it apart for days, and I'd love to know what you guys would think positively and negatively about being able to level up your gear. Obviously, I think others have tried it. It's been received poorly, or there's been issues. And just because something has failed before doesn't mean we can't take maybe some of the good ideas of it and rework it. But Final Fantasy has had progression systems with weapons where you level them up. Before, also the same thing with even Final Fantasy 15 Comrades, you pump in items to level up your gear itself. And that kind of gear progression tied in back, to the theme of this, that really XP is pointless, and I would do more if I had a way of progressing outside of just the tomes and the gear itself, giving me another path, giving me more options. I would love this. I don't know how you would implement it exactly in 14 today. I think, again, like all of these changes, minus maybe the engram or the loot box, all of these changes would, in my mind, require an expansion. This is something that you need to think through the entire life cycle. But how amazing would it be to be able to say, all right, I'm going to get this weapon, and then through the course of content and content and content, feeding it items, feeding it experience, doing this over and over again, that weapon essentially becomes your main weapon the entire expansion. It can end up competing with all the various other things you can do. Maybe it's still faster to go do the dungeons and things like that, because obviously if you incentivize one thing, you could easily de-incentivize the other content. You could easily de-incentivize Savage if the best way to get the most powerful weapon, or a weapon that's on par with it, is to just go and grind over your leveling roulette over and over again. And so that fixes problems, but at the same time introduces problems. I'm not blind to that, but again, this is just, I'm curious as to where you guys fall on this, on this topic. Are you feeling like you want more types of progression systems in the game right now? If so, what kind of progression systems have you seen that you enjoy that work really well? Is this, again, like I said at the very top of the video, is this more because obviously of the delay with the relic system in Eureka to 4.2? That normally starts now, and that and it's something that I'm just, reflecting on, would say, like, man, I would love to go do, more content on a tank or a healer if it benefited me more. It's that right now the benefit is solely weighed to leveling up these other jobs. But that's just me, and I could be weird on this topic alone. Could be. We'll just say it. You are. So in summary, to summarize all of my thoughts here, I don't think we actually need a new tank or healer. Now, I absolutely want them. If they give me a new tank and healer in 5.0, I'll level it up. But at some point, just like now, when I have all my tanks and healers at level cap, the same problem exists. And that's where I hope to see, at least some growth in the game itself over the course of this expansion, over the course of future expansions as well, because I just love this game so much, obviously, because I talk about it a lot. So guys, let me know what you guys think. Merit point system, Paragon system, is the solution as it's always been with Eureka and the relic system, or something a little bit from past Final Fantasy games in which that you would level up your gear in a more traditional fashion, obviously once you get that certain type of gear in and of itself. It fails, I'm sure that somebody in the comments will talk about the spirit bonding system, And that was really relevant, I think, more in 1.0. And as we progress forward and as Matera just like drops from everywhere, it's become less relevant to me. But obviously, yes, your gear does get, spirit bonded through playing the game and things like that. But at the end of the day, there doesn't seem to be like a real solid benefit for that. There's nothing really exciting for me to see when I'm like, oh, I've completely spirit bonded with this piece of gear again. Anyway, guys, I'd love to know your thoughts. I'd love to know what you're thinking. And I hope you have a fantastic day. Thanks again for watching this long video and this, opinion piece regarding the merit point system, regarding the XP system, regarding the gear progression systems that we could, should, and maybe deserve. So anyway, I'd love to know what you're thinking. Thanks again. And I hope you have a fantastic day. Take care. Hey, everybody. Brian and Chuck here for Work the Game. Chuck wants to tell you that you should totally subscribe to the channel. And that you should totally hit that like button. Oh, and then we also got t-shirts on sale for some reason. That's a little bit mean, Chuck. I'm not crazy.